Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be reviewing The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. This was described to me as one of the most shocking books ever, or one of them anyway. I can't remember exactly where I heard that from, but I heard it on someone's channel. I just can't remember who. But as soon as I heard that, I thought, right, I've got to buy it. Of course, this was before my book buying ban. So, yeah, I was extremely excited to read this. And I also knew that this was based on a true event. And there's also a movie that's based on the book called by the same name, The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. And on the front, it states that it's about a true story. I haven't watched this yet. I'll probably try to watch it tonight. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So as I said, The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum is inspired by a true event. And I just want to gently touch on that right now. Ages ago, there was a girl called Sylvia Likens. I will have a picture up on the screen somewhere. And there are loads of videos online that describes what happened to her. And a massive trigger warning as well that you shouldn't watch any videos about Sylvia Likens unless you've got a really strong stomach, because it does get into really upsetting things. But in a nutshell, she was taken into the home of a family that ultimately tortured her and done loads of disgusting things to her. I mean, think about the most horrible thing that you could do to a human being, and that's what happened to Sylvia. All this was orchestrated by the female adult of the household, and she even encouraged her children and neighbouring children to torture Sylvia. So I'm not sure whether it is appropriate or not, but it's my video, so I'm going to do it anyway. I am going to dedicate this review of Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door to the memory of Sylvia Likens. So before I get into this is going to be a spoiler-free video, and this is going to be my own thoughts and feelings regarding the story as a whole. So The Girl Next Door focuses around a male character called David. Now David, first off, that's a great name. He is our narrator. We see the whole story through David's eyes. And literally the first sentence of this book, when you open it up, it says, "You think you know about pain?" And as soon as you read that, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to read something special, shocking, and important all rolled into one. This really tells David's story about how he met Meg and Meg's sister Susan, and how she moved into a house next door. And it also says about how David and Meg met each other. And at first this book opens up and it's not shocking, it's kind of sweet and romantic and gentle and soft and all that stuff. And when I was reading it, not saying that I didn't enjoy it, but when I was reading it, I was thinking, really? This is the most shocking, or one of the most shocking books ever? It's kind of quite nice and romantic in a way. And the reason why I say that is because David has, I won't say romantic feelings towards Meg. He is a young boy, and he's kind of at that stage in his life where he's noticing girls, not really sexually, but he's interested in them romantically, or if that makes sense. You should get the point. He's gone past that stage where he thinks that girls are horrible and they are full of cooties or whatever now. Then they form a very, very sweet bond and friendship towards each other. But Meg is living with this female called Ruth, and she's saying to David about how all these things are happening to her. But David says, oh no, Ruth is really nice. She can't possibly done all that. And we're kind of seeing it as a kind of a third party type of thing. You know, like there's all this weird stuff that's happening and you're not sure about, okay, there's something a bit off, but you know, we can't really find out what it exactly is and what's exactly happening to Meg within his household. And David refuses to believe that Ruth will ever do any of these horrible things. And Ruth is kind of like she doesn't really have a husband. She smokes and drinks all the time, and she even allows the boys to smoke and drink, even though they're underage. We find out that David has a group of friends. They like to play a game where it's unwinnable. You'll always end up losing no matter what you do. And the boys even climb a tree and spy on Meg when she's getting undressed. And you're thinking, well, this is just boys being boys. They're just curious about what a naked girl looks like, and they're curious about sex, and they're curious to see what it's like to be with a girl in a sexual situation. And you're thinking, well, it's just boys being boys. They're just curious. If they see a dead cat on the sidewalk, they're more likely to be curious and poke it with a stick and find out what's going on. And yeah, that some of the boys, they are very, very unusual, and they do very horrible, well, not really horrible, but questionable things. But as the story progresses, we find out that Meg is in this horrible situation where she's been tied up in Ruth's basement, and she sees Meg as kind of a problem. She thinks that females shouldn't be overly sexual towards males, because if they do, they will get pregnant and the guys will leave them. This has happened to Ruth in her past. I believe that her previous lover got her pregnant and left her, and she sees in her deformed mind she thinks that she is saving Meg by doing these things to her. And she tells the boys that Meg is dirty and they are forbidden to touch her. They can do all this stuff to her, but she cannot be touched. But later on, as you are reading the book, it gets more and more and more and more disturbing about what they do to Meg. It's not as extreme as what really happened to Sylvia Likens. There's an interview at the end of the book where Jack, the author, says that there was no point of him going overboard because you pretty much know what happened with Sylvia, and there's no much point, going overboard with Meg. You get the point. There's no need to overdo it. There's enough in there to say, right, this is really sick and horrible. So some of the things that they do to Meg, like they extinguish cigarettes on her body. They put a dog turd in her mouth. Yes, one of them sexually assaults her and has sexual intercourse with her, and she's broken down to her fundamental human instincts. She's always tied up in the basement. She's always gagged and blindfolded. And when this is going on, David knows that this is happening, and he even is in the room, not really participating, but is witnessing what his friends and what Ruth are doing to Meg. And as the story goes on, you think about, okay, what is David going to do? Is he going to participate? Is he going to succumb to his sexual curiosity and desires towards Meg? Because we do know that he is sexually attracted towards Meg, and that he wants to, always really curious about what it's like to be with her in that way. But at the same time, we know that David is a very, very sweet person and he has feelings towards Meg. But you're thinking, will he go that far? Will he do the unthinkable to this girl that he has all these strong feelings towards? I won't say if he does or if he doesn't, but yeah. It's a very, very powerful story. It really is. And Susan, Meg's sister, even gets a lot of abuse herself whenever Meg is, questioning Ruth or fighting back. Ruth is always saying to Meg that if she misbehaves in any way, then Susan, her sister, will get the full punishment. And this story is just about, I wouldn't say a survival story. It's described as more of a coming of age story. And It in a way it is, and in a way it isn't. If you're familiar about the case of Sylvia Likens, then you know. Well, I knew when I was getting to the end, I was thinking to myself, right, I know that this can't possibly have a happy ending, and I won't say if it does or if it doesn't. But knowing what I know, what happened to Sylvia, I knew what was going to happen, or more or less what was going to happen to Meg. Now, the writing style of this book is extremely easy to read. It flows in a good way. There isn't much that I got confused with, and I got fully invested in this story and these characters, whether they were good or bad. Now, when it comes to, does this book deserve to be labelled as one of the most shocking books ever? Yes, I would say that it definitely does deserve that title. This is shocking. It doesn't start off shocking. It starts off really sweet and calmly, and then as you progress, as you go through all these pages, as you go through all the chapters and you reach the ends, then it gets more and more and more and more horrific. So do not go into this thinking that it's not going to be shocking. It is shocking. It is horrifying. It is disgusting. Is it the most disgusting book ever? Probably not, but it's not for the faint of heart. If you are easily offended, do not read this. But if you have watched documentaries on Sylvia Likens, and as I might have said, there are loads on YouTube about her, then you'll be more familiar about this story. There are things that they do to Meg in this story that actually happened to Sylvia. So if you are familiar with that case, then you will pick up on things that they do to her. For example, Sylvia, they actually carved that "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," or something along them lines, onto her stomach. They actually branded her. And in this book, they do the same thing. It's not extensive as that, but it's pretty much the same message. But I was really impressed by this book. I really enjoyed this book, despite how horrific and terrifying and disgusting it was. I had a lot of fun reading this book, and yeah, I actually have another Jack Ketchum book, which I can't remember who I said this to, but I said that when I read one, I'm going to read both of them back to back. So after I finished The Girl Next Door, I went straight on to Off Season, which pretty sure this is Jack's first book, or one of his first books. And Off Season was recommended by John at the Books of Blood channel, which he has ceased to do now, sadly. Happens, but sometimes happens. But he recommended this book, and I, like The Girl Next Door, I went onto eBay and bought it, and I am nearly through it actually. I've got about 50 pages left, so one more day and I would have finished this. I'm not sure about when this video is going to be coming out, but probably when it does, I will have it on the same day as I do my review for this one, or I will have this video coming out shortly after this one. So yeah, but this one's all about family, well, sort of family of cannibals, and not as good as The Girl Next Door, but still really enjoyable, and yes, very, very horrific and gory. But I'll go through that when I'm talking about this book. So what am I going to rate The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum? Probably a 4 stars. It was very enjoyable. If I was to be honest, not as horrific and gory and bloody and, you know, batshit insane as I wanted it to be, but it was very, very good, and I really enjoyed it. It's going to be difficult for me to let that one go. I might hang on to it for the time being, but eventually I will pass it on. But please let me know if you have read The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. Have you watched the movie? What did you think about them? And yeah, let's just have a discussion about it down below in the comments. And let me know if there's any more Jack Ketchum books that you would personally recommend to me, because I am really interested to read more on this author or more of this author's work. So if you have any more recommendations on books that you think that I should read next, then please comment down below and with pleasure I will check them out. But with all that out of the way, I'll see you on my next video.